The American South. In recent years, there has been a ton of fascination surrounding the area, particularly around the things that don't always have a clear explanation. As someone who lives in the American South, I will say I hate the woods. I'm not about to sit here and tell you I think there's demons and other monsters out there. I just feel incredible unease looking into them at nighttime. But even if I don't fall into the paranormal beliefs surrounding the area, other strange, more real mysteries have popped up across the entire region. Which brings us to today's video: the Unsolved Mysteries of the South Iceberg. A list of nearly 200 stories that discuss everything from unexplainable disappearances to unsolved murders to ancient ruins that have baffled researchers. And yes, we do have some cryptids and other paranormal goings-ons we will give a bit of attention to. We discuss all of this and more in today's video. Let's begin. Swift's Silver Mine. In 1760, a man named Jonathan Swift was said to have discovered a silver mine. The location of the mine is a subject of debate and legend, with it spreading between Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee. It was said that Swift was shown the mine by a wounded bear, and for the next decade, he returned to the mine, carrying out tons of silver with every visit. He was also said to have buried these silver deposits all over the region, again doing this for a decade, recording his adventures in a journal. Later in Swift's life, he went blind and obviously couldn't return to the mine, so its location died with him. Following his death, the first mention of Swift comes from a guy named John Filson, who claimed that a region of land near him held a silver mine worked by a man named Swift. This mine also may have been a part of a cover-up. In 1792, a man in Kentucky named James Harrod believed in the mine, and a man simply known as Bridges told him he knew where the mine was. They set out to look for it that same year, but James never returned from the visit. Bridges did. This is it. And all of this has become a local legend spread throughout all of Appalachia. Despite the legend, a geographical survey across the region has found no significant deposits of silver, leaving the identity of Jonathan Swift, the location of the silver mine, and the secrets of his journal all lost and forgotten to history. Valley Hill Lights. In a small community outside of Springfield, Kentucky, sits the town of Valley Hill, the home of several strange occurrences. All sorts of things have been seen in this town, from the appearance of the Virgin Mary to angels descending from the skies clad in gold, and the most commonly reported occurrence, a set of lights that pulse throughout the sky, all different colors. This too has remained a local legend, attracting thousands of people per year who stop by in hopes of witnessing another miracle in the sky. Mont Hiley IV. On November 28, 2003, Mont Hiley IV told his parents goodbye for the last time. He was at his parents' house and planned to go to his parents' farm so that he could see his dad. The pair were planning to go hunting that following morning, a plan that did not come to fruition. Mont's father arrived at their farm that morning only to see it in a very strange state. The gate was open and every light in the house was on, same as the TV. However, it was empty. Mont was nowhere to be seen. Mont's truck was also not there. The following morning, one of his family's neighbors called Mont's parents and said that their son's truck was parked on his property. The keys were left in the ignition, alongside his hunting rifle and $200. Just a week previously, his parents gave him $300 in cash as a gift. His parents went back to their own farm and looked inside a mobile home they held on the property. Inside, the bed was disturbed and a pair of wet jeans were inside. In the pockets was Mont's cell phone and the remaining $100. Out on the porch, an equally wet pair of boots sat. However, Mont was still nowhere to be seen. The search for him began, and it spread across the entire state of Alabama, but would not yield results until January 14, 2004, 2 months after he disappeared. A body was found inside an unused grain silo, far too decomposed to tell immediately who it was. But forensic data using dental records revealed the sad truth. This was Mont Hiley IV, dead for some time. This is where the case has ended. The Alabama State Bureau of Investigation has kept this case open, and an independent online group called the Alabama Cold Case Advocacy continues their own investigations today. But even after 22 years of investigations, we still have no answers as to what happened to Mont Hiley IV. Melissa Witt. This is Melissa Witt, a resident of Fort Smith, Arkansas, who was abducted on December 1st, 1994, 31 years ago. After she was reported missing, some of her friends said that Witt was going to the Bowling World Lane to surprise her mother, who was spending a night out with her own friends. This was the last place she was ever seen. The investigation started in the parking lot, where Melissa's blood was found on both the asphalt and in her vehicle. But she was nowhere to be seen. 2 weeks later, in December of 1995, her body was found in the Ozark National Forest. This is where the story has ended. No one knows who took Melissa, even if several suspects have been named, including a man named Charles Ray Vines, a murderer who was active in the area and was targeting teenage girls. This part of the investigation was picked up in 2019, the same year Charles died. Police took canines to where Witt's body was found, and a cigarette filter with Vines' DNA was found there, making him the prime suspect. This is still an open and ongoing investigation. Jared Potter. In June of 1968, a flight took off from Kankakee, Illinois, en route to Dallas, Texas. Aboard this flight was Jared Potter and his wife. An hour into the flight, Jared asked his wife to be let out so that he could use the restroom. This was the last time he was ever seen. What happened next is a mystery. People aboard this flight described it in different ways. Some called it a jolt, some called it a quiver, some just reported a tremendous noise. What is known, as reported by the pilot of the flight, was that a door opened on board, one right next to the bathroom. However, this didn't make the pilot panic. The plane wasn't high enough to be pressurized, meaning that a door opening would not have that suction effect. But an hour after Jared stood, he still had not returned, causing his wife to ask a flight attendant to check for him. This is when the opened door was discovered and the panic set in. Jared was nowhere to be seen. The entire plane was searched, and a search area was set up in the suspected area he fell from, but he was never found, leaving only theories. These theories vary, from simple ideas that Jared fell from the door after it opened, or that he may have mistook it for the bathroom door and opened it accidentally, or, more grim, he intentionally opened the door, aiming to take his own life. Werewolf of Henrico County. We've reached our first cryptid of the list, one I had never heard of. In the southeast part of Virginia sits Henrico County, which may house a werewolf. For years, the citizens of Henrico have reported the loud howl of a wolf. While you may immediately dismiss this as something less fantastical like a wolf, it's always said to be much louder than that, like ear-piercing demonic type of volumes. And it's not just auditorial experiences either. Several people reported seeing this beast as well. A lot of these sightings have taken place at the Springs, a recreation center that first opened in 1925. The sightings have all been similar: a 6-foot-tall, gray wolf-human-dog hybrid. This just goes to show that West Virginia is the superior Virginia. We have the Mothman, you fools have a boring gray werewolf. Grunch Road Monster. We've got another cryptid. This one hails from New Orleans. Sightings of a goat-like being with leathery skin and sharp spines, standing at 4 feet tall, have dated back to the city's foundation. Other reports have described them as reptilian in appearance, and some of their more prominent sightings have been reported on Grunch Road, giving them the name Grunch Road Monster. It's often been reported attacking livestock, such as goats and cows, bringing up similar comparisons to the chupacabra. While skeptics may dismiss the Grunch Road Monster as another lie or legend, prepare to be disputed, because there is a photo of the Grunch Road Monster. Behold, in all its glory, irrefutable proof of its existence. Chandra May. On the night of February 4th, 1986, 17-year-old Chandra May was working at a local McDonald's. Business was slow that night, so her manager sent her home early. Chandra called her mom and informed her that she was headed home, but was going to stop at a local store to purchase a Valentine's card for her boyfriend. But Chandra never made it home. However, her car did. Once her mom realized that Chandra should have been home a while ago, she went outside and saw her car parked at the end of the driveway. Upon investigating it, she saw that all of her belongings were inside, but she was not. Chandra was missing. An investigation began, one that ended 22 days later. On her 18th birthday, an off-duty firefighter was digging for fishing bait when he found a body buried in the dirt, wrapped in bags bound with industrial tape. Chandra May was just found. An autopsy revealed no serious trauma, but did uncover the disturbing detail that she had been assaulted. This is how the story had remained, up until this year of 2025. In April, a man named Reuben Weeks was arrested after a new DNA test was conducted. It linked hair left behind in Chandra's car to Reuben, and he was arrested. However, the case does remain open today, as the sheriffs continue to search if Reuben acted alone. Charleston County Jane Doe. I know this iceberg is called Unsolved Mysteries of the South, but this one was recently solved. In 1977, partial skeletal remains were discovered in a brush pile near Highway 52, located in Goose Creek, South Carolina. The remains were determined to belong to a female, one who was 5'2" to 5'8" in height, and had an age range of 20 to 75. So, a very broad net of missing people. Due to the body's decomposition, her identity was not known, and the case went unsolved. The body was henceforth referred to as the Charleston County Jane Doe. Renewed interest in 2020 began with some updated forensic technology. From here, a profile was drawn in hopes that it may catch someone's eye. In 2022, it was discovered that a serial killer by the name of Samuel Little confessed to strangling an unidentified woman, of which he then left her body along Highway 52. Using this confession and the updated forensic evidence revealed the identity of the Jane Doe, Leola Etta Bryant. She went missing in March of 1974, being taken by Little after the two met in a bar. Tennessee Wildman. Lurking around East Tennessee is Appalachia's very own legend of Bigfoot. Sightings of a tall, humanoid, ape-like creature have dated back to the early 1800s. Different reports have listed him as being covered in fur, which sometimes was brown, sometimes red, sometimes orange. One story states that the Wildman was a part of a traveling freak show and would break from captivity, now left to wander the woods of the Smoky Mountains. The one difference with the Wildman is the fact that he's more human, comparing that to Bigfoot, which is more ape-like. So when Bigfoot is referred to as that missing link in evolution between humans and apes, the Wildman may be another step in that process closer to the human side. The Night Marauder. Between the years of 1919 to 1926, citizens of East Tennessee were targeted by a serial killer. By the time his spree was over, at least 40 people lost their lives. The killer was given the nickname Night Marauder due to the fact that he struck at nighttime. He targeted people in their own homes, ones without electricity. He also targeted mostly women and would do unspeakable acts to them before taking their lives. During one of these attacks in 1919, a woman inside the house was left alive, while her cousin was killed. The woman gave a brief description of the man, only revealing his skin color, that of a black man. The Night Marauder would also write to the press, taunting them about the fact that he would never be found. His taunts were correct, as the case of the Night Marauder went unsolved. UTMB Galveston Face. Located on a wall at the Ewing Ring of Galveston's University of Texas Medical Branch is a face, right in the limestone. It was first spotted on the 4th concrete square from the ground. While not a cause of interest at first, its story makes it stand out. It was thought this face was graffiti, so it was sandblasted off. However, just a few days later, the face reappeared, now in a different spot. This is repeated a few times. The face has been scrubbed, washed, and otherwise removed several times, and it always reappears in a new spot. It's not known who the face belongs to, but a local legend claims it belongs to the college's previous owner, who warned his family to not sell the land. The face is still on the wall today, resting on the 2nd concrete block from the ground. Mammy Thurman. We're starting Tier 2 off in my home state, discussing one of the oldest mysteries around, that of Mammy Thurman's ghost. Mammy was born in Kentucky in the year of 1900. At age 24, her and her husband would move to Logan County, West Virginia. Her husband was a police officer who worked nights, but Mammy would also be out at nighttime. However, she would go partying, frequenting local speakeasies and other venues. This may have led to her death. On June 22, 1932, her body was found in a patch of blackberries by a local boy. The autopsy revealed she had her throat slit and that she was shot in the left side of her body twice. The death of Thurman shocked the local quiet community, but the killer was found. It was her landlord, as a bloodied razor was also found in his home, which connected him to her death. But the mystery of Mammy Thurman is still alive, as years after she has died, people still report seeing her ghost alongside the road where her body was dumped, standing there staring at cars as they pass her by. Wetzel County Jane Doe. We're staying in West Virginia for this next entry, headed to the north part of the state. On February 13, 1983, an elderly couple in Wetzel County, West Virginia, were out on a hike when they saw what they believed to be a mannequin tossed over in a local hill. They reported illegal dumping, but authorities arrived to discover that a much more serious crime had been committed. This wasn't a mannequin, it was a body. It was a female with brown hair. She was estimated to be between 30 to 45 years old, with a height of 5'5". This is how the case has remained for a while. Nowadays, investigators have tried to link her death to the serial killer known as the Redhead Murderer. Upwards of 11 women, all with red hair, were targeted across a few states in the region, and her murder matches the MO of the killer. This is where the case has remained, and the Wetzel County Jane Doe remains unidentified to this day. Lisa Shuttleworth. On September 3rd, 2003, 9-year-old Ryan Shuttlesworth was woken up for school by his mom, Lisa. The day progressed like normal, until it was time to go home. Ryan waited at the bus stop that afternoon, where his mom would usually pick him up, but his mom was not there. So he instead walked home. All the usual cars were in the driveway, but the front door was locked. So Ryan assumed his mom was out doing something, so he went to a friend's home to wait for his mom to come home. Lisa never came home. She disappeared. Ryan waited for hours before his friend's mom took him to his grandparents, where the search for Lisa began. The grandparents had a key to the house, but Lisa was not inside. The house looked undisturbed. The only thing that was missing was her purse. Lisa disappeared. There are no further leads. She's gone, but Ryan continues to search for his mother today. Marshall County Jane Doe. On April 15, 1977, fishermen on the bank of the Catoctin River in Union Grove, Alabama, discovered a body. At first, the body could not be identified. It had natural deterioration, but also surgical work. His head, hands, and feet were all sawed off, and his heart was removed from his chest. That is where the case remained for nearly 20 years. It wasn't until May of 2023 that his body was identified through genealogy studies, comparing that to the missing persons reports. Through this, it was discovered that the Marshall County Jane Doe was Jeffrey Kimsey, a citizen of Santa Barbara, California. So what happened? How did he end up in Alabama? Well, it's not known. The only lead is that in that area of the time of Kimsey's discovery, several tips came in that an early 90s Chevy truck was driving around the area, and that the driver looked incredibly nervous, leading some to believe that this man, whoever he may be, kidnapped Kimsey and was now looking for a good spot to dump the body. William and Peggy Stevenson. On May 29, 2011, the bodies of William and Peggy Stevenson were discovered in their homes. The discovery came from a family member who did not see them in church that morning. This was unusual. They never missed church. So the family member investigated their absence and found something incredibly disturbing. The Stevensons were dead, bludgeoned, stabbed, and staged. The exact details of how they were staged are not known. Investigators have been very careful to not release details. One thing released simply said that there wasn't a room in that house that was not staged. Everything had been touched and set up to display a scene. There was also a message left behind by the killer, but the contents of that have also not been released. This is all that's known about the case of Peggy and William Stevenson. The first flying saucer. UFOs and other alien-like sightings are cornerstones of modern-day paranormal interest. For decades, people have claimed to see things in the sky that aren't typically there, sparking interest in theorized visits of beings beyond the stars. But some of you may be curious. What is the first instance of someone seeing one of these things? We will use this next entry to discuss one possible contender. January 25th, 1878. A front-page report of the Dinosaur Daily News gives us this story. It states that a man named John Martin was hunting about 6 miles away from the city when he saw a dark object high into the sky. It was about the size of an orange, but continued to grow in size as it got closer to Martin. At one point, he said the famous words that made this story stick out. It appeared to take the shape of a giant black flying saucer. It continued to fly, and as it got closer, it was glowing bright enough to blind the man as it hovered right over his head. And then, it flew away, disappearing, leaving John incredibly confused. It's not known what Martin saw that night, but it is known that this is the first recorded instance of the term flying saucer. I-4 Dead Zone. I-4 is a road that connects the Florida cities of Tampa and Orlando, and it also holds the title of the most haunted road in America. Several strange occurrences have been seen across this road, and it dates back to when this section was simply Florida marshland. In the late 1800s, a community was set up in the area. Unfortunately, yellow fever would soon sweep through it, claiming the lives of 4 German immigrants. They were buried with no last rites, as the town's priest was away in Tampa for business. The land was later bought in 1905 by a man named Albert Hawkins. Hawkins removed a rotted wooden burial marker that pointed out the graves, and just a day later, his house burned down. Decades later, the land was purchased by the government so that I-4 could be built, right over top the graves of those who came before. On the opening day of the highway, the exact spot that was placed over the graves saw a tractor-trailer jackknife, blocking off traffic. Now, that section sees far more accidents than the rest of the road combined. The area also sees a drop in cell reception, and people who drive over the zone report that electronic parts of their vehicle, such as their radio and lights, also malfunction, making people wonder if this section of I-4 really is cursed. After all, it is in Florida. I wouldn't be surprised if one day we learn that the entire state is under some type of paranormal curse. Chapel Hill Ghost Light. Since the 1950s, train conductors going through Nashville have reported something strange. Someone standing on the tracks, warning oncoming drivers of something. The local legend claims that an unnamed signalman was sent to Chapel Hill, a small town outside of Nashville, to warn oncoming conductors that the track was unstable. That area had intense rains over the past few days, and the dirt below the tracks was washing out. So, the signalman was there to provide a warning. However, it too was downpouring that night, and the signalman was not seen by the conductor. He did not slow down, and the signalman fell down on the tracks, attempting to get away from the train barreling towards him. He was too late. Now, locals report seeing a mysterious light flashing in the area the signalman died in, and thousands gather throughout the year to catch a glimpse of the Chapel Hill ghost lights. Raymond Lamar Green, Jr. The birth of a child. The most exciting day in a parent's life. And for Donna Green, the birth of her son, Raymond, was exactly that, before it turned into a nightmare just 5 days later, as Raymond was abducted from his Atlanta, Georgia home on November 6, 1978, and his mom knows who did it. When Raymond was born, a lady named Lisa Morse introduced herself to Donna, claiming that her sister was also giving birth, and that she was there to visit her. Morris was described to be in her mid-20s, standing about 5'5" tall, with a skinny build. She was a black woman, and had a visible scar on the right side of her cheek. Morris visited Green a few more times in the hospital. On the day of Donna and Raymond's discharge, a driver took them home, where Morris also asked for a ride. Donna's stop was first, and Lisa saw where they lived. A few days later, she arrived unannounced, and Donna let her right in, thinking she was just receiving a visit from a friend. Also at the house was Donna's brother, who also recently just had a kid, and was visiting his family. An hour into the visit, Donna stood to get a shower, and 15 minutes later, she returned, just to see that Lisa and Raymond were missing. Donna's brother told her that Lisa took Raymond outside after he was crying, and that's the last time he was ever seen. A police investigation was launched, and the first fact was determined. There was no Lisa Morris. That was a name this woman made up, and that's all that's known. The Atlanta Police Department lost the original case file, meaning they had to start over from the beginning, making some wonder if there even was an attempt to begin with. Unfortunately, Raymond is not the only child to have gone missing in that time. Several other children were abducted from the Grady Memorial Hospital, where Raymond was born. Today, he would be 47 years old, but he, alongside whoever Lisa Morris was, have not been found. Honey Island Swamp Monster. We have another Bigfoot, this one hailing from Louisiana, more specifically, the Honey Island Swamp in St. Temporary Parish. It's been called a few different names, from the swamp ape to the Cajun Sasquatch. It's reported to be about 7 feet tall, with gray hair and yellow piercing eyes. The monster has also been reported to have a putrid odor, that people smelled the thing long before they saw it. The first sighting of the monster was in 1963, when Harlan Ford, a recently retired air traffic controller, was taking photos of wildlife. After his death, his photos were examined by his family when they saw the monster inside of it. Since then, the monster has popped up a few times around the area. Land's End Light. We're now headed to Beaufort, South Carolina, where locals have reported seeing a strange, yellowish orb. This orb appears on a 3-mile stretch of road in Land's End. When the light first appears, people have claimed that it appears as a single headlight of a car. But as you get closer to it, you now realize it's high in the air, 10 to 12 feet high. Sometimes, it stays stationary. Sometimes, it follows onlookers. Sometimes, it chases them down. It's become a local legend, with people theorizing what it really is. The common story is that it belongs to the ghost of a Confederate soldier killed here during the Civil War. In 1861, a platoon of Confederate soldiers were here, and a fight broke out between them and the locals. This fight ended with one soldier getting decapitated. The legend claims that this light is that soldier, now wandering the lands, lantern in hand, attempting to find his missing head. Bonnie Bess McFadden. We're ending Tier 2 with another disappearance, that of Bonnie Bess McFadden. On August 19, 2005, the 78-year-old woman was last seen cashing a check at a bank in Clarksville, Arkansas. The tellers here reported nothing strange about her. She was behaving normally. This was the last time she was ever seen. She lived on the same street as her brother, and after a few days of not seeing her, he went to her house to check on her. At the property, her car was there, and the gate and front door were unlocked. But Bonnie was gone. There is no further information. It seems that she just vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. Barbara Blount. We're starting Tier 3 off with a story similar to what we ended Tier 2 with, the disappearance of an elderly woman. Barbara Blount was on a phone call on May 2nd, 2008, speaking to her neighbor. She said she had to get off the phone to clean her kitchen, and that was the last time someone heard from her. Her family lived together on the same rural road in the backwoods of Livingston Parish, Louisiana. Her family had tried to reach her that day, just to get no response back. This led to her nephew going to her house just to see a disturbing sight. Her car was gone, the front door and window were open. Inside, no valuables were taken, her glasses were left behind, and Barbara was nowhere to be seen. A few hours later, her car was found about a half a mile away from the property. It was hidden in a tree line, and the keys were tossed about 20 yards from the car. Again, she was not with her vehicle. Her family suspected foul play of some kind and described Barbara as an anxious, cautious woman. She wouldn't open the door to a stranger and carried a gun with her every time she left the house, leading some to believe that if someone had something to do with her disappearance, she knew them. Lemoyne Allen and Crenice Jones. In 1992, 2-year-old Lemoyne Allen was traveling with his aunt and uncle. They were en route to church for Mother's Day. Here, the family met up with Arla Russell and her boyfriend, Tyrone Edwards. They were friends and had their own young daughter, Crenice Jones, with them. The two children played together while the adults hung out. When it was time to go, the children were nowhere to be seen. The area was searched up and down, but no trace of either child was seen. This was in 1992, and they would be 35 and 37 today, so it's very possible they are still alive out there somewhere. Altamahaha Water Monster. We've reached our first sea cryptid of our list, something I'm more personally interested in. This legend comes from the stream stemming off the Altamaha River in Georgia. The monster has been dubbed as Alti, and monster truly describes this thing. It's reported to have a length of 30 feet, and that it was strong enough to flap its body, which made waves big enough to capsize ships. The most famous water cryptid is the Loch Ness Monster, but sightings of Alti predate it by 151 years, first being seen in 1850, and it's been seen a few times since. Deborah Ann Woodson. On March 1st, 1986, a father arrived at an apartment just to see his 5- and 7-year-old children stuck on its balcony. The building itself was locked, so he called the police. The apartment was being rented by his ex-wife, Deborah Ann Woodson, who was nowhere to be seen. She was not inside, and her car was on the property still. The only lead comes to us from one of her friends, who said he saw Deborah that day. They were going to town together, and just 15 minutes after they left her apartment, she got sick and asked to be taken home. So, she went back home, and that was the last time she was ever seen. She did not show up to work that night and has not been seen since. A month after she disappeared, her purse was found hanging on a tree limb alongside Highway 28. Inside, her wallet, driver's license, credit cards, and photos of her children remained. And that is where the case has remained today. Wayne Taup's Rice Festival Incident. Wayne Taup's is a famous Cajun musician, a bit of a legend in Louisiana. Also in Louisiana is an annual rice festival that takes place in Crowley. The first one was held in 1937, and it is exactly what it sounds like, a festival to celebrate rice. These two ideas are very much connected, because an urban legend claims that during one of these rice festivals, Wayne Taup's was in prison. But due to his immense popularity, he was escorted onto the stage by police officers and was allowed to perform, after which he was taken to jail. There is no proof of this happening, no photos, no videos, no audio recordings, nothing. It is just one urban legend that thousands of people claim to remember happening. Wayne is still alive today, so maybe he can confirm whether or not this is true. Pascagoula Phantom Barber. A strange phenomenon swept across the state of Mississippi in 1942. Several young girls would wake up only to see locks of their hair were missing, seemingly cut off during the nighttime hours. This happened to several young girls. The first two victims were Mary Briggs and Edma Marie Heidel. The two shared a room and gave a description of someone inside. I saw the figure of a kinda short fat man bending over me with something shiny in his hand, and he was playing with my hair. This happened to a few young girls throughout the year, and they all reported the same thing. Something far more brutal took place later. The man broke into a home and assaulted the parents of a young girl with a rusty pipe. This led to further interest and demands for justice, and a month later, a man named William Dolan was arrested. He was a German immigrant who, according to press at the time, held sympathies for the German army currently waging World War II. So, he was arrested. But Dolan always claimed his innocence and passed a lie detector test. So some believe that this arrest was only made to appease the public, and an easy target, a German immigrant, was arrested. However, it's very likely that Dolan was not the Phantom Barber, and the real one got away with his crimes. The Limp Family Curse. Located in St. Louis, Missouri, the Limp Mansion is a historic home many believe carries a curse. The house was built in 1890, and major renovations came in 1911 as the Limp family expanded their brewing empire. The story, however, begins with Adam Limp, a German immigrant who came to the US in 1836 at age 38. He introduced German lager to America and built the Western Brewery, which became a major success. After Adam's death in 1862, His son, William Limp Sr., transformed the brewery into one of the largest in the country. But the good times would not last. William's son Frederick, the heir to the business, died in 1901 at age 28. Devastated, William Sr. took his own life in the mansion in 1904. Leadership then fell to William Limp Jr., who faced the impossible challenge of running the brewery during Prohibition. With alcohol banned and the company collapsing, Billy also took his own life in the mansion in 1922. The family's misfortune didn't stop there. Elsa Limp Wright, the youngest daughter, took her life in 1920, and another son, Charles Limp, became a recluse in the mansion before he too took his own life in 1949. By mid-century, the once grand home stood empty, a shell of the Limp family's former glory. Today, after being restored as a restaurant and an inn, it's widely regarded to be one of the most haunted houses in America. Beast of Bladenboro. In the winter of 1953, going into 1954, citizens in Bladenboro, North Carolina saw an increase in deaths amongst their livestock and pets. These deaths were brutal. I don't want to get into the exacts, but far beyond the normal killing of an animal. They also followed a pattern, like how a serial killer targets humans. Something was targeting these animals in that exact way. Alongside these killings, a strange animal was spotted. It was feline in appearance, with the body of a panther and the head of a bear. It was about 3 feet in length and stood about 1.5 feet tall, like a massive, oversized wildcat. This worked the small town of Bladenboro into a frenzy as the locals went on the hunt for the beast. They didn't find anything, but the killing stopped soon after. The Beast of Bladenboro has become the city's very own mascot, and an annual festival, like the one held for the Mothman, is also held here. The pink creature of Goose Creek Lagoon. We're back in Goose Creek, South Carolina. Remember, we were here earlier discussing a missing person, and now we're back discussing a cryptid. In 1928, a man named Herbert Sass was rowing his boat down Goose Creek, and he saw a strange creature in the water. It lunged at him, and he had a hold of it. He described it to be about 5 to 6 feet in length and pink in color. It was incredibly slippery, and he couldn't keep a hold of it, so it fell back into the waters and swam away, never to be seen again. Emmanuel Khalif Burtz. On August 4th, 1989, Emmanuel Burtz was born at his grandmother's house in Dallas, Texas. Afterwards, he was taken to Park Lane Memorial Hospital to be checked out. He was discharged a week later and came home on August 11th, 1989. One day later, a woman named Deborah Manning showed up, claiming to be a social worker from the hospital. She was making a follow-up visit and left soon after. She knew several confidential details about Emmanuel, such as the fact that he had an eye infection. He came back in September and delivered the unfortunate news that Emmanuel may have HIV, due to his mom's drug use while pregnant. She said that he needed to go to the hospital that following day. Emmanuel's mom left first, leaving him behind with Grandma. Deborah arrived later to take the child to the hospital, and that was the last time either of them were ever seen. The disappearance was reported to the police, and the investigation revealed that the hospital did have a social worker named Deborah Manning. But when the family saw her, they saw that they were two totally different people. So obviously, the abductor Deborah Manning was an alias, likely used by someone with hospital connections. This would explain how they knew about Emmanuel, his condition, and his address. Unfortunately, this is where the story ends. Emmanuel is still missing today. Morgan County Jane Doe. Yet another missing person who went missing in my home state. On May 10th, 1950, a hiker in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia found the body of a woman. She was along an embankment basically on the border of West Virginia and Maryland. The body could not be identified, but researchers are still investigating this case. It was determined that she was strangled to death, and in 2007, her body was exhumed to collect DNA. The case has not had any developments past this. Skunk ape. We're ending Tier 3 with another Sasquatch-like being. This one hails from the states in the southernmost part of America, Georgia, Alabama, and where most sightings have came from, Florida. The creature is said to resemble that typical Bigfoot-like build, half ape, half man. This one is more ape-like, and has some unique features as well. Its fur is typically described to be black, with hints of white throughout. Combine this with the fact that the beast is always described to have a putrid stench around it has earned it the name skunk ape. In 1818, a local newspaper from what is now Apalachicola, Florida, spoke of a man-sized monkey that tormented locals, and included was the fact that it stunk really bad. Other sightings have popped up, and one notable one is from the 70s, when two sheriffs were stalked through the Florida marshlands by one. It got close enough that the officers had to shoot at it to make it back off. The most notable photo of the skunk ape comes from the year 2000, this one right here, and the photo was sent into the Sarasota Sheriff's Department. It came from an anonymous source, and has remained the best visual of a skunk ape today. The common and boring theory is that these things are escaped orangutans, as they have been spotted in Florida before. Sometimes they escape from captivity of zoos, and sometimes exotic animal traders just kinda set them loose in the Everglades. But remember, it is in Florida. It's possible that these skunk apes are just your run-of-the-mill crackheads who sometimes make national headlines. William Strange. Starting Tier 4 back off in West Virginia, in the strange town of Strange Creek. This entry deals with the town's namesake. It dates back to colonial times, when a man named William Strange came into the region with a scouting party, surveying the lands. On his first day in what is now West Virginia, William was separated from his group, and was never seen again. He wandered off into the woods, and was never seen by his party again. They attempted to fire their guns into the air, so that he would hear them and find them, but he never came forward. William Strange was lost, and the town and nearby creek were both named after him. Kate Ragsdale. On February 24th, 2013, 73-year-old Kate Ragsdale was found in her home, dead. She was a retired librarian, having worked at the University of Tuscaloosa's library for her entire career. On that night, one of her neighbors found her body, and it was determined that she had been dead for a few days. She was last seen that Sunday, when she was at a friend's house to watch the new episode of Downton Abbey. From here, investigators interviewed over 200 people, mostly consisting of people in the neighborhood. Former colleagues and Ragsdale's friends and family were also interviewed. And from this, nothing was found. Investigators have no idea who killed Kate, and the case remains open today. Diana Braungart. On March 11th, 1987, Diana Braungart was finishing her shift at the Twin City Mall, located in Crystal City, Missouri. She left her workplace at 10 p.m. and never came home. The investigation began at her workplace, where her car was found, right in the spot where she parked it before. But Diana was not with her car, making many believe she never made it to her vehicle. Some of her co-workers did note that a man in his early 20s was seen talking to Diana that night, and that is the only lead investigators have. She has not been seen since. Nell Cropsey. In the early 1900s, the Cropsey family were famous in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. People raved over their beauty, and the daughter of the family, Ella Cropsey, had many male suitors. This may have led to her death. On the night of November 20th, 1901, Ella stepped out on her porch and was never seen alive again. Just 37 days later, her body was found floating in the Pasquotank River. This area was searched before, making authorities believe that she had been dead for a while and her body was just recently moved into the river. The blame for her murder immediately fell on her boyfriend of the time, Jim Wilcox, who happened to be the son of the sheriff. They had been together for 2 years, but it was far from a perfect union. Her family claimed that Nell was scared of Jim, as he had frequent outbursts of anger. Also, the night she disappeared, they were together at the time. The pair stepped outside at about 11 p.m. as Jim was headed home. Nell escorted him out, and that was the last time she was seen alive. Jim said he'd left Ella alone that night, but he would be arrested soon after. Jim served 15 years in prison, but would be later pardoned by the governor. Jim then met with a set of publishers to write his story, and soon after, he would take his own life. The publisher would then die in a car crash. All of this remains a mystery in North Carolina. Did Jim kill Ella? Why did he take his own life? If Jim did not do it, who did? Or just overall, what happened to Ella Cropsey? Storyville Slayer. Between the years of 1991 and 1996, 12 women were murdered in New Orleans. The women were all similar. They were all black women, aged between 17 and 42, and were mostly strangled to death. And their bodies were all dumped near Lake Pontchartrain. Since these kills all followed a pattern, authorities believe that this was one person killing these women. One woman managed to come away from an attack on her life, and she gave a description of the attacker. He was a well-dressed, muscular, middle-aged black male. The last body believed to be a part of this spree was found on May 6, 1996, having been found strangled on a boulevard in the city. In 1995, a task force established by the New Orleans Police Department, with support from the FBI, began to investigate the killings. A suspect was named, and it was found that he dated one of the women who was killed, but there wasn't enough evidence to convict him, so he got away. This is where the story has remained. A few other suspects have been named, but no arrests have been made. Leroy Gorman. In 1982, Leroy Gorman was the vice president of the board of directors at the Charleston National Bank, which is in West Virginia. Gorman was overseeing the incorporation of the First National Bank of South Charleston. This acquisition may have cost him his life. On the evening of November 12, 1982, Leroy went to the Steak and Ale restaurant in Charleston with his girlfriend. They ate their meal and left at about 8 p.m. Leroy opened the car door for his girlfriend, and 3 shots rang out. The vehicle they were fired from sped away, and Leroy was taken to a local hospital. He was initially stable and gave a description of his shooter, a white male with a slim face and dark medium-length hair, and he was wearing glasses. Leroy had no idea who the male was, and unfortunately would pass away in the hospital at 4:57 a.m. The leading theory is that the assassin was involved with the South Charleston Bank, whether directly or indirectly. The thought is that perhaps he lost his job due to this merger and was now taking his anger out on the man who caused it. Redbird River Petroglyphs. On December 7, 1994, a 50-ton piece of limestone fell into Kentucky Route 66, and when it was investigated, carvings were found inside. Now, petroglyphs have been seen in Kentucky before, but researchers noticed how different these ones were. A sign near the stone states that 8 Old World alphabets are used here, which were extinct by the time Christopher Columbus landed in North America. So the Red River petroglyphs may provide evidence that Columbus was not the first European to explore the modern-day United States. Other researchers say that any resemblance to old alphabets are purely coincidental. Today, the rock sits in Clay County, Kentucky. Tracy Pittman Kegley. On the night of April 26, 1998, Tracy Kegley and her daughter were out running errands. Their last stop was the BP gas station in Wetumpka, Alabama. Surveillance footage shows Tracy pumping gas, going inside to pay, and leaving the service station. This was the last time she was ever seen. The next morning, a local resident reported a white geostorm parked about 2 miles east of gravel pits. Inside, a 2-year-old girl was left behind, unharmed. This was the daughter of Tracy Kegley, and Tracy herself was missing. The car was left on, idling, with the windows down. Her purse was also left behind, and this is all that's known. Tracy seemingly disappeared into thin air. The Gray Man. Off the coast of Myrtle Beach sits Pawleys Island, where people have reported seeing a ghost for decades. The legend of the ghost, called the Gray Man, dates back to the Great Storm of 1822, when a terrible hurricane struck the area. A woman claimed that the Gray Man visited her in her sleep and warned her of the storm. Others have claimed to see the Gray Man right before other massive hurricanes have hit, such as Hurricane Hugo in 1989. The most common story claims that the Gray Man died on a freak accident on the way to meet his wife and now wanders the shores of Myrtle Beach. So if you happen to be in Myrtle Beach and you look out to this island and see this gray dude standing there, you might want to pack up and leave. Mysterious Woodson Lateral Road. We're starting Tier 5 with another stretch of haunted road. This one is in Woodson, Arkansas. There are 2 common occurrences seen here, that of a light and that of a phantom hitchhiker, and they both stem from the same source, a crashed motorcycle. It's said that a couple was coming home from a date, and their motorcycle wiped out on the road, killing both of them. Now people see a single light, like that of a cycle's headlamp, before it passes right through them. Others have claimed to see a woman in a white dress, talking about her boyfriend, who left her behind, and how she was now looking for him. After picking her up, she disappears from the car soon after. The Moss Man. In 1978, a couple in Florida were enjoying their time on a beach when they saw a figure laying down on the coast. It was wearing some strange jacket covered in leaves. They watched the man for a moment before it stood and stared them down. It was said that the creature had red, shiny eyes, and it was several feet taller than them. It was also huge, weighing anywhere from 200 to 450 pounds from their estimate. It's on this day that the legend of the Moss Man began. Some Floridians saw it in the water, its mossy head popping up to stare them down. Other times, people have seen it standing in the mist, again just staring at people with its red eyes. Again, it is Florida, so I full-heartedly believe that this thing is out there somewhere. The Phantom Hiker of Grandfather Mountain. For years, people hiking at Grandfather Mountain, located in North Carolina, have reported a strange person walking alongside them. He appears in the evening, right as the other hikers finish their trails. He resembles a grizzled old man who appears to be wearing old workman's clothes, while carrying a hiking stick and a backpack. He never acknowledges greetings or any sorts of conversations. He just hikes before eventually disappearing. Tonetta Yvette Carlisle. On November 16, 1989, Tonetta Carlisle was walking home from school. It was about a 5-mile journey, but she unfortunately never made it. A resident who lived on Tonetta's street, about a half a block from her house, saw her walking down the street when a tan and yellow van stopped beside her. Several masked individuals got out and grabbed her. The neighbors immediately got in their own car and followed the van. They called the authorities and reported what they saw, including the license plate number. Tonetta's mom would later report her as missing, but it took the police 2 days to put these 2 reports together, not realizing they were connected. The vehicle was traced to Jeffrey Jones, who had previously served 8 years in prison due to his cases of rape and sexual assault. The police pulled up to Jones's property, where they saw his van with him inside, dead. This was 2 days after Tonetta was taken, and she has unfortunately not been seen since. Davis County John Doe. In the morning hours of January 7th, 1990, two hunters in Owensboro, Kentucky discovered a gruesome sight. They found a body covered by thickets of brush. That body was of a male, and the scene was brutal. He had been beaten, shot, and unfortunately used. Also, his hands and feet had been sawn off. Due to the extreme level of violence seen here, the body could not be identified. The case has been opened for investigation on 3 different occasions, but no results have came from it. Japanese Garden Girl. On February 3rd, 1981, a city worker in Watson Island, Florida, was walking through a Japanese garden when he discovered a body, having been ran over by a car that tore through the area. The body was badly damaged from the car, and it appeared that the car hit her multiple times, which implies that this was intentional and targeted. No one saw who hit her, and her body was far too damaged to be identified, and the case remains unsolved to this day. White River Monster. Another cryptid is lurking in the waters of the American South. This beast has been spotted in the White River of Arkansas and was first described in 1937. It was said to be a river monster and that it was huge. One estimate put it at 12 feet long and another one put it at 60. Another sighting claimed that it had a horn, but its face was rarely ever included in reports. The 1937 sighting had a sworn affidavit with it, coming from a farmer named Bramlett Bateman, who reported seeing the beast a few times over a series of months. This sprung the White River Monster into national popularity, and a woman came forward claiming that she had seen that same thing in 1924, 13 years before this. Another farmer claimed he saw it in 1915, which makes me think these people were just having a contest to be the first one to see it. Everyone saw it earlier than the other one, that sort of deal. Who knows what this thing is? Some people believe it to just be a manatee. Beast of LBL. We have another werewolf. This one lives in Kentucky. As early American settlers moved to Kentucky, some of them went missing in the woods. Loud demonic howls also filled the space of nighttime. It's said that the Shawnee in the area warned the settlers of a large garou, a strong, powerful wolf-like creature. There have been modern sightings too, people going out camping only to be hunted and stalked by this monster. Again, you may be skeptical about all of this, but there is a photo. Behold, see the monster in all its unholy glory. Momo the Monster. Yet another Sasquatch-like creature. This one has been seen in Louisiana, Missouri. That's the city of Louisiana in the state of Missouri, by the way. Anyways, being a monster from Missouri earned the creature the nickname Momo. Missouri MO monster, yeah, you get it. Momo has been reported to have a wide, round head on top of a furry black body. The creature was said to stand at 7 feet tall and had an awful stench attached to it. This one wasn't a single sighting. A few newspapers reported on this monster throughout the area. At one point, the frenzy became crazy enough to warrant a 30-man posse to hunt down it. Nothing was found. If Momo was real, he may still be out there. Below shooting. On the evening of June 6, 1993, a man walked into the Below supermarket located in Windsor, North Carolina. The store is closed to the public, only employees were inside. The man brandished a .45 caliber pistol and robbed the store of $3,000. After he received this, he opened fire. "I hope God can forgive me," the man said before he shot 3 people. 2 men were still standing, and the shooter asked if they knew who he was. They both said they didn't, but he didn't believe them. He attacked one of them with a knife, but let the other one go away unharmed. The man attacked with a knife was rushed to a hospital, and he was saved. As for the shooter, he was never found. Survivors of the attack have a description: a black male in his 30s with a military-style haircut. Unfortunately, that is where the case remains today. Matthew Pendergrast. On December 1st, 2000, Matthew Pendergrast let his roommates know he was leaving for class. This was the last time he was ever seen. He was a student at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, but the following day, his car was found over 100 miles away in Arkansas. The keys were left in the ignition and the car itself was unlocked, but Matthew was nowhere to be seen. A survey of the surrounding area found his clothes in a neatly folded pile, with his shoes left on top. A further investigation revealed a very strange entry in his journal. He wanted to pursue immortality by joining the Silver Elves, and to do so, he had to walk into the water and become one with nature again. The Silver Elves is a cult based around elven magic and has been in practice since 1975. Remember how I said I may make longer videos about some of these individual topics? Yeah, let's just stop right there and we'll come back for a potential follow-up. Amarillo Zoo Mystery. We're ending Tier 5 with a more recent story. On May 21st, 2022, the Amarillo Zoo in Texas released footage of a strange creature seen lurking their grounds. It appeared to be a coyote, standing and walking like a human. It has since been dubbed the Unidentified Amarillo Object, the UAO. Not much more has been said about this creature, save for the theories. Some believe it was a chupacabra, as livestock in the area had recently been violently attacked. Some believe it to be a prank, someone in a costume, and I guess my own thoughts are in line with that idea. It's someone's fursuit, and they were way too anxious to show it off at a con, so they stalked a zoo instead. David Ezel Blockett. On December 11th, 1980, a woman knocked on the door to a home in Newport News, Virginia. Vanessa Blockett opened the door just to see a social worker from the United States Social Services. She claimed that the DSS was sponsoring a function for children at the Riverside Regional Medical Center, and she convinced Vanessa to let her take both of her children there, including her 2-year-old son Frederick and his newborn brother David. A few hours later, police received a call stating that a young boy was wandering the shopping center in Hampton, Virginia, all by himself. When police arrived, they saw Frederick, who had a piece of paper in his pocket with his name and address on it. He was returned to his mother, but David was nowhere to be seen. A few days later, authorities found David's diaper bag near Yorktown, Virginia, and that is where the case has ended. David was kidnapped and never seen again. Snarly Yow. Across West Virginia and Maryland, people have reported seeing these strange, shadowy, wolf-like creatures. The fur has been described to be dark blue, gray, or white. They also have saggy skin, red eyes, and fierce-looking teeth. They were also fast, being able to keep up with horses at their full gallop. People who have seen the Snarly Yows report that upon viewing them, they are inflicted with intense pain, fear, and paranoia, without the dog even moving towards them. Since they're not inherently violent, a leading theory is that, much like the Mothman, these things are thought to be omens of some impending event in one's life. Mary Jimmy Shin. On July 20th, 1978, 22-year-old Mary Shin was called by her friend asking if she could hang out later that night. Mary said sure, but first, she was meeting a man interested in buying a home she was selling. The man's car was in the shop, so Mary offered to pick him up. She ended the phone call with a joke. "Come looking for me if I'm not back this afternoon." Mary never called again. Her mother began the search and discovered that a man was seen getting in her car, and said car, a blue 1976 Buick, was found abandoned behind a grocery store. It was unlocked, the windows were down, and the keys were left in the ignition. Inside, her belongings, including her purse, cash, and sunglasses, were left behind. Also inside the car, the dashboard was scuffed, matching earlier reports that a blue car was swerving on Highway 32, and it appeared that the people inside it were fighting. This has all led to the following theory. The man picked Mary up, trafficked her, or otherwise made her vanish. The problem is, no one knows who this man was, so the case has unfortunately went unsolved. Bambi Brantley. On the evening of October 22nd, 1986, Bambi Brantley was seen walking to her home in Leesville, Virginia, and that was the last time she was ever seen. What is known about her is that Bambi stopped at a convenience store and used a payphone. She also bought a fountain drink, which was later found inside her trailer. She was a car salesperson and had plenty of friends in the community. Unfortunately, this is all that's really known about her disappearance. She seemingly walked into her trailer and vanished from the face of the earth. Hempfield Tunnel. Under the roads of Wheeling, West Virginia runs an old abandoned tunnel. It was once a part of the Hempfield Railroad line and was built in the 1850s. One part of the tunnel runs under the Peninsula Cemetery, which has sparked rumors that said tunnel is haunted. However, the tunnel was also tied to a murder. In the 1860s, a German immigrant named Joseph Eisel killed people on a spree that stretched from Parkersburg to Wheeling. Inside this tunnel, one of his friends, Elias Ulrich, was also murdered. Soon after his body was found, people reported hearing strange noises coming from the tunnel, ghostly groans and pleas for mercy. It has remained a popular tourist attraction in the city. Amy Gellert. On the night of March 20th, 1994, the parents of Amy Gellert came home to a horrible sight. A masked intruder, dressed head to toe in black, armed with a knife and a pistol, was waiting inside their living room. He forced the couple to the floor and paced the room back and forth. Then, headlights shone from the outside and the masked man launched into a panicked attack. He repeatedly stabbed the pair of them before the father made it outside and signaled for help. Police arrived and the couple were taken to a hospital. However, even worse news waited for them back at home. Their daughter had been killed. It seems that she was the one in the car, and when the father ran out, so did the intruder. He then killed Amy Gellert. No one knows who did this. Amy or the family did not have any known enemies. Even if this attack was targeted, no valuables were stolen. The three were only attacked. The case unfortunately ends here, and the masked intruder got away with his crime. Kirsten Davis. In the early hours of July 3rd, 1991, Kirsten Davis was driving along Highway 297 in Toombs County, Georgia, en route to see her friend. At around 1 in the morning, someone shot her. She was killed instantly, and her car swerved into a ditch. Passing motorists reported the overturned car half an hour later, and a full investigation was launched, but there wasn't really much to go on. This was seemingly a random act of violence, and the killer of Kirsten Davis has never been found. Governor William Goebel. In 1899, Kentucky was electing their next governor. The Democratic candidate, William Goebel, was running against the Republican candidate, William Taylor. When the votes were counted on Election Day, Taylor appeared to be the winner, receiving 193,714 votes compared to Goebel's 191,331, a difference of roughly 2,000 votes, or 0.59%. Immediately, investigations, lawsuits, and demands for recounts began. Democrats challenged numerous ballots, including more than 1,200 votes in Nelson County, arguing that ballots listed Taylor as W.P. Taylor instead of his correct name of W.S. Taylor. Accusations of voter intimidation, coercion, and fraud also surfaced across both sides. The state's Board of Elections reviewed the disputes, and despite the uproar, they did certify Taylor as the winner. This was partially done to prevent a civil war, as both parties had armed militias at the Capitol ready to fire on one another. Taylor was inaugurated governor on December 12, 1899. But Goebel and his supporters weren't done. Over the next several weeks, the legislative re-examined the results. After Taylor was inaugurated, the Democratic majority in the Kentucky General Assembly set up a special contested election committee to re-examine the vote. This committee, which was mostly made up of Goebel's allies, reviewed allegations of fraud, intimidation, and improper ballots, especially in heavily Republican counties. The committee concluded that enough votes were invalid or tainted to change the outcome of the election. Violence and tension were rising in Frankfort, the state's capital, so the legislature met under heavy guard. Despite Republican attempts to block the proceedings, the Democrat-controlled assembly voted to accept the committee's findings. By doing so, they formally overturned the Board of Elections certification of Taylor's victory and declared that William Goebel had actually won the election. So only 40 days after Taylor had taken office, Kentucky had a new governor. On January 30th, 1900, as Goebel was walking through the Kentucky state capitol, he was shot. 5 bullets fired by an unknown gunman. He was rushed to the hospital, and that evening, while gravely wounded, was sworn in as governor of Kentucky. 3 days later, he died. This makes William Goebel the only American government to be assassinated while in office, and it also gives him the shortest governorship in U.S. history. But the question remains, who shot William Goebel? Suspicion immediately fell on Taylor and his allies, and that same day, Taylor fled the state of Kentucky and sought refuge in Indianapolis. The governor of Indiana refused to extradite him, effectively shielding Taylor from investigation. Though 13 people were arrested in connection with Goebel's assassination, no one was ever conclusively identified as the shooter. Carol Blades. On December 15, 1969, Carol Blades went into Springfield, Missouri to Christmas shop. She then returned home and put up her tree and left to do laundry at a local laundromat. She was going to return at 5 so that she could wake her husband up for work. He instead was woken up by a phone call. At 3:45, someone called the house and woke him up, but he missed the call and fell back asleep. Again at 6:45, he was awoken but did not make it to the phone. It was one of his friends, but he saw that Carol was not home. He called Carol's cousin Sue and had her check on her at the laundromat. Carol was not there, but her car was. Her laundry was also left behind in one of the machines. So the investigation started with her car. Skid marks were left in the gravel where Carol's car was parked, and an oil leak was seen near it. There was also mud on the windshield alongside new scratches on both sides of the car. Additionally, the antenna on the back of the car had been bent and torn away from the body. 3 days later, her keys were found 100 feet away from the car. It wouldn't be until the next year, Christmas of 1970, that her body was found by a farmer. Her bones were scattered along a hill. Her wedding ring was also found nearby. That is where the case is ended. No one knows what happened to Carol Blades. The Moon-Eyed People. The Moon-Eyed People is a legend that comes to us from the Cherokee. They were described to be a race of pale-skinned, small-statured, nearly blind humanoids that lived along the hills, caves, and dense forest of the southeast United States. The most common story then says that the Cherokee attacked these Moon-Eyed People at sunrise, as they were nocturnal and could not see during the day. The remaining ones then fled underground. Peter Francisco. We're starting Tier 7 off with an American legend, much in the vein of John Henry, even if his name is not as well known. Of course, we're talking about the 6-foot-tall, broadsword-swinging, cannon-lugging legend that was Peter Francisco. Peter first gained prominence at the Battle of Camden in South Carolina during the American Revolution. The American line collapsed, and he noticed that a cannon was about to be seized by the British. So he stepped up, fought off 11 attackers, and threw the cannon over his shoulders and took it back with him, surviving all of this. Later in the Revolutionary War, Peter participated in the Battle of Stony Point. He was injured horribly, but managed to kill 11 British soldiers himself, which gained him favor with George Washington. Peter managed to survive the war. So where's the mystery in all of this? Well, it's known that Peter did exist, but the mystery comes from his feats. What exactly he did during the war, and if any of these were exaggerated a little bit, but I choose to believe they are all real. The Tomb of Nina Craigmiles. On October 18, 1871, the Craigmile family were taking a buggy through downtown Cleveland, Tennessee. Unfortunately, tragedy would strike, as a train hit the buggy, killing Nina Craigmiles. She was only 7 years old. Her family survived, but her father was a mess. To honor his late daughter, he purchased land close to where she passed away and built a mausoleum for her body to rest in. The building cost a modern-day equivalent of $1.1 million. This is where the mystery begins. Shortly after the mausoleum was finished, the entrance began to bleed. Dark spots of crimson that appeared and spilled over. This infuriated Nina's father, and he ordered for it to be fixed. This was a 3-time process, and all 3 times saw the same thing: the marble bled. Eventually, he gave up, and the marble continued to bleed. 27 years later, Nina's father would unfortunately pass away, and in 1928, his wife, Nina's mother, also passed away. This is where the legend may be embellished a little bit. It's said that as the parents passed away, the streaks of red grew darker. Now, is the marble really running red with the blood of the Craigmile family? Probably not. The leading theory is that these patches of red are leftover iron deposits in the marble, oxidizing with time, giving them that red appearance. The White Thing. Here we are with another Bigfoot-like creature, but this one is more unique. It's said to be covered head to toe in white fur, and it was also said to have a lion-like head. He also has glowing red eyes and stands at 8 feet tall. The creature has been seen since the early 1900s. The people who have seen it describe it as docile, running far from humans when spotted. I don't believe in this one. I mean, I don't believe in most of these things, but come on, it's bright white, it has bright red eyes. How the hell is this thing gonna hide in fucking Alabama? Kelly Holland. On February 13th, 1982, a massive snowstorm hit Knotts County, Kentucky. Due to this, 6-year-old Kelly Holland's classes were canceled for the day, and he stayed home with his mother. Later in the day, Kelly went outside to play in the snow. This was at 11 a.m., and his mother last saw him at 4 p.m. At this point, she went to a neighbor's house to answer a phone call, not having a phone at her own home. When she returned, Kelly was nowhere to be seen. She assumed he went to a friend's house, but when he didn't return for hours on end, that is when she really got worried. The police were called and an investigation was launched, but Kelly was nowhere to be seen. The leading theory is that he wandered off and got lost and died of exposure. There were several abandoned mines in the area, so the thought was he wandered into one and froze to death. The Lost Boys of Hannibal. On May 10th, 1967, brothers Billy and Joey Hong, along with their friend Craig Dow, informed their family that they were going to explore a nearby cave. The cave was in their hometown of Hannibal, Missouri, and they had previously seen the cave. They were chased away by nearby construction workers and decided to return the next day. So after school, the teenagers went into the cave, and this was the last time they were ever seen. For more than a week, the police and community members of Hannibal searched the cave systems. The boys were not found. Local train routes were also checked, with the thought being that the boys may have hopped on one and fled town. The city mayor even asked for the Missouri National Guard's help in the search, and they were still not found. Finally, in 2006, a new elementary school was being built in the town of Hannibal. In the construction, an undiscovered cave was found, and the search briefly resumed. No traces of the boys were found in this new cave, leaving the fate of them to be something of speculation. The Goro. Now we are discussing a beast that lurks in the Ozarks, the Goro. Jesus Christ, what the fuck is this thing? Living in Arkansas already has to be miserable. What do you mean you could also run into this thing? A story in the Arkansas Gazette, published on January 31st, 1897, first mentioned this thing. They called this creature the Goro because that was the noise it made when it killed its prey. And here it is, a big 20-foot-long lizard with oversized hands and a big spiked tail. I don't think it needs to be said, but it's likely this thing was a hoax made up for the newspapers. Thank God. Sybil Brumley. On April 27, 1997, Sybil Brumley did not show up to her job at the DeSoto Sheriff's Office in Louisiana. The following day, investigators arrived at her house to see a disturbing sight. The front door was kicked in, the screen door was cut, and her interior was in a disarray. Several potted plants were knocked over, and furniture was flipped over. Sybil was nowhere to be seen. Her purse and other belongings were also taken. It's believed Sybil was kidnapped and held against her own will, but there isn't any idea of where she went. Margaret Mary Maiden. Residents of Biloxi, Mississippi last saw their neighbor, Margaret Mary Maiden, on April 30th, 1980. After not hearing from her for a few days, they went over to her house just to see it in a state of disarray. There were clear signs of a struggle, and on the floor, blood was spilled. But attempts to clean this blood were made. There were no signs of a forced entry, but there were some things missing. This included Margaret herself, her car, and her pet dog. A few days later, the dog was found in a city called Gulfport, which was about 15 miles away from her house. The dog was unharmed. A few more days later, her car was seen abandoned at a Holiday Inn on Highway 90 in her town of Biloxi. A man was seen in the car, but that's the extent of it. Mary disappeared and was never seen again. Lydia's Bridge. We're headed down to North Carolina for another haunted bridge. We're in Jamestown, under the underpass of two bridges on East Main Street. It's here where locals have reported seeing the ghost of a young woman. It's said she appears on rainy and foggy nights dressed in a white gown. She flags down drivers as they pass by, and the ones who stop are asked by her to be taken home. The name Lydia has been given to the ones who stop, but if she's picked up, she disappears soon after. This has been going on since the 1920s at least. The leading theory is that she may have been involved in an accident on that road and now haunts it. The Thunderbird. Now we can start Tier 8 by discussing one of my favorite cryptids, the Thunderbird. I love these things, they are so interesting to me, and I get to yap about one for a few moments. The Thunderbird is a mythological avian of Algonquin origin. They're typically depicted as birds of prey, and their wings were big and powerful enough to cause thunder with every flap, hence the name Thunderbird. These things have been depicted in art and other murals for 4,000 years. There is a bit of a lost media mystery to the Thunderbird as well. An 1890 issue of the Tombstone Dispatch discusses how two hunters killed a winged beast, and a photograph was taken of their kill. This photo has not been seen since, but you may have seen this one. This one is a hoax, and it was made to promote a TV show. As for what the Thunderbird is, researchers believe that Native Americans may have stumbled upon the skeletal remains of pterosaurs or pterodactyls and made the legend from here. Old Green Eyes. One of the more brutal yet overlooked battles of the Civil War was the one that took place in Chickamauga. It was the second bloodiest battle in the Civil War, with over 4,000 people dying in 2 days. Once the battle was over, soldiers observed the battlefield, looking for their fallen comrades to bury. But reports from both sides described something strange. All the hate and malice in the area attracted some strange beast. It was white and hairless, a human-like beast with a mangled jaw and 2 large fangs sticking out from it. And of course, 2 big, bright green eyes. The beast was never captured, but was reported to be seen after the war. In 1981, Park Ranger Edward Tunney claimed to have seen Old Green Eyes. When it passed me, I could see its hair was long like a woman's. The eyes, I'll never forget those eyes. They were glaring, almost greenish-orange in color, flashing like some sort of wild animal. This was said in his report. Nowadays, Old Green Eyes is a local legend. The story of that area that people search for an answer to, only to come away empty-handed. Gloria White Moore McDonald. On January 26, 2001, Gloria White, her husband Daniel, her son Sean, and his girlfriend Erin went for a hike at the Queen Wilhelmina Park, located in Minya, Arkansas. However, upon arriving at the trail, Gloria decided against going up it. There was a ton of debris on the trail from a previous bad snowstorm. She turned back to rest at the lodge's gift shop and restaurant while the group continued. They finished the trail, which took about half an hour. They then returned back to Gloria. They could not find her. Gloria was nowhere to be seen, and the car they took to the mountain was right where they parked it. The entire mountain was searched, which included crews going up it with dogs while helicopters flew overhead. Gloria was not found. The dogs did pick up a scent, and they followed it down a trail. It ended at the road, and the dogs could not pick it up any further. The Angel of Ava. In the 1940s, citizens living in Ava, Missouri were visited by a particularly gratuitous being. People woke up to check their mail, and they saw checks totaling $100. Sometimes a message would be included, but there was never a name, save for a signature of Your Sunshine Friend. Now in these times, post-Great Depression, living in rural Missouri, $100 covered several months of expenses. That's like $1,800 today, which now buys you rent and maybe a Chipotle burrito. Besides the point, the Angel of Ava story became nationwide, and people clamored about their mailboxes hoping that the angel would pay them a visit. There were no further visits, and the identity of the Angel of Ava remains a mystery to this day. Roberta Elam. Back in my home state discussing the mystery of a murdered nun, we'd never come back here to discuss anything positive. In June of 1977, Roberta Ann Elam was found murdered in Wheeling, West Virginia. She originated from Minnesota and moved to West Virginia to continue her practice. Unfortunately, it would be the last state she lived in. She was found beaten, strangled, and assaulted. The murderer has never been found. But there are some leads. Over in Pennsylvania, a similar situation unfolded, where people were murdered in this same circumstance. There were also reports of a strange, unshaven, unclean man who lurked around the convent, but was never identified. Gloria Colita Ghost Ship. Built in the late 1930s by a man named Reg Mitchell, the Gloria Colita was the largest ship sailing in the Caribbean at the time. The ship measured 165 feet in length and weighed 175 tons. It was massive, and was truly a sight to behold for anyone who saw it. The route Mitchell followed was typically from South America to Cuba to Mobile, Alabama. He would pick up rice in South America, sell that in Cuba, where he would pick up sugarcane to sell in Alabama, where he would then pick up lumber to sell in Cuba and South America. This was a profitable but arduous task. Mitchell built up a bit of a reputation by doing this, but one day would mysteriously disappear. He set sail on his travels on January 21st, 1940, headed to Mobile, Alabama to pick up lumber. He made it and turned back around to go to Cuba, a destination he never arrived to. The Gloria Calita never made it to Havana. 2 weeks after the ship left Mobile, the United States Coast Guard spotted it floating about 150 miles from the shore in the Gulf Stream. The ship was badly damaged. The rigging and the rudder were gone, so were the crew. They were all gone. This is where the mystery comes in. What happened to the crew of the Gloria Calita? The leading theory is that a rogue wave washed over the ship, drowning the crew, before battering its hull for later discovery. Another theory brings the Germans in. World War II was raging, and German U-boats were in the Caribbean. It's thought that the crew may have been captured by them and were forced to act as a guide. Whatever happened to the crew remains a mystery to this day. Fort Mountain Stone Wall. Located on Fort Mountain in Chatsworth, Georgia, is a wall. The wall was 855 feet in length and zigzagged all over the mountains, and it's been baffling researchers for years. All that's known is that the rocks from the mountain summits were used to build this wall, and it would have taken a lot of time to build it, meaning it probably served an important purpose. There are a few thoughts. The more likely one deals with the Native Americans. It's thought a group, perhaps the Cherokee, could have built this for religious or burial purposes. Another theory states that the Spanish conquistador Hernando de Soto could have built it in defense against Native American attacks. The more mythical theories claim that the Moon-Eyed people we mentioned before, or after this, I forget, I wrote it a long time ago, they may have built it. Who knows? Jefferson County John Doe. Right as the new day of December 3rd, 2009 rolled in, the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department responded to a call that reported gunfire at the Preston Oaks apartment complex on Quest Drive. When officers arrived, they found a gunshot victim with multiple gunshot wounds. He was pronounced dead just an hour later. The victim is unknown. He had multiple forms of identification, and they were all proven to be fraudulent. A cell phone was also found on the victim, and it had a selfie of him, pictured here. The body has never been claimed, and investigators do not believe he was an American citizen. His identity remains unknown nearly 20 years later. Old Mike. In Prescott, Alabama, a traveling salesman by the name of Old Mike arrived on several occasions during the early 1900s. Old Mike sold stationery, such as pens, paper, and thread. He sold these along offices, homes, and businesses near the railroad tracks. He would arrive at 3 p.m., stay overnight, and then board the 3 p.m. train the following day, headed off to sell more stuff. Old Mike was a beloved figure in the community and was known by everyone. In August of 1911, Mike arrived in town where a tent revival was being held. People said Mike did attend, but did not participate. He just kind of lingered along the sideline before the revival came to a close. The next day, Mike was found dead under a tree. Officials suspected no foul play, claiming that he had died of a heart attack or a stroke. His body was secured and no identification of any kind was found. His body was embalmed and put on display with hopes that he may be identified. However, no one came forward to claim Old Mike, leaving his true identity a mystery. There is also a mystery in his actual death. Some believe he was killed, targeted by a man named Pat McFarland. Other witnesses in town claim that McFarland and Mike got into a fight and that both were kicked out of Little Rock due to this. Could this Pat McFarland have targeted Old Mike? And who was Old Mike? Dead Children's Playground. Located at the historic Maple Hill Cemetery in Huntsville, Alabama, is a playground, much like any typical one you may see. But the cemetery next to it is far from typical. Locals report that even when no visible children are around, the equipment behaves like someone is using it. The most commonly reported sighting is that of swings moving on their own. Due to this, the playground has gained that grisly nickname, the Dead Children's Playground. The local legend claims that children were killed during the 1919 Spanish flu pandemic and they were buried in the Maple Hill plots. And now, their restless spirits spend the night enjoying their time on the playground equipment. De Soto's Lost Gold. Starting Tier 9 is another mystery of a lost mine. This one belonging to Hernando de Soto. We mentioned him earlier with the stone wall. He was a Spanish conquistador scouting the American South in search of gold, and this legend details one massive source of it he may have found. One legend claims that de Soto and his soldiers encountered a tribe in South Carolina who were wearing gold jewelry and were using gold-tipped weapons. It's claimed this tribe revealed where the mine was, and de Soto raided it, claiming the riches for himself. All of this is a local legend, and some even claim that a full-on gold mining town was built on top of the area in the 1800s. But this town has been lost to time, much like the location of the supposed gold mine. Mysterious Vanished Canasti. This is a story similar to the lost tribe of Roanoke, but this story takes place in North Carolina, not Virginia. In 1725, British soldiers first found the Native American town of Canasti, deep in the woods of North Carolina. 2 years later, they returned just to see nothing. The entire colony disappeared and left behind no traces that one was ever there. Lake Lanier. One of the largest lakes in Georgia is also the home of several urban legends with some real history to back it up. Lake Lanier was first created in the 1850s, and its creation was rife with controversy. The lake was made when the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers flooded more than 56,000 acres of farmland and communities to build Buford Dam. In doing this, 700 families had to sell their land and move. Marked graves at the site were also moved, but it's believed a ton of unmarked graves were not, being left behind in the water. In addition to this, 200 people have died in accidents at this lake since 1994, leading to the belief that it is haunted. Now, people claim to see spirits on this lake. The most common one is that of a blue-dressed female spirit who floats on the water's surface. People swimming or fishing on the lake claim to see ghostly hands reaching up to grab a hold of them on the waters, giving Lake Lanier its ghostly status as a haunted site. Victor Shoemaker Jr. On May 1st, 1994, 5-year-old Victor Shoemaker Jr. was visiting his grandparents in Kirby, West Virginia. He was with 2 older cousins, and they went into the woods to shoot their BB guns. The pair were walking along, and Victor said he was going to go back home to eat. The 2 cousins said they were going to go on from there, so Victor went back on his own. Unfortunately, he was never seen again. When Victor's parents asked where he was, the 2 cousins initially gave the wrong location, later correcting it. The spot Victor was last seen in was half a mile from his grandparents' house. Due to the initial lie, the cousins were forced to take a polygraph test, which they passed. This has led to investigators suspecting no foul play, and the leading theory is that Victor got lost somewhere in the woods, later dying of exposure. Victor's father has refuted this, claiming that his son knew the woods well and would not get lost in them. Regardless if Victor did get lost or was taken, the answers have not been found to this day. The Crossroads Tavern Massacre. This next story is very weird, mostly due to its recency compared to how much info of it is available. On a night in 1981, a man walked into a tavern located in the city of Port Lavaca, Texas, and shot 4 people execution style. These 4 killed were Lenny York, the owner of the bar, and 3 customers, Marjorie Sheffield, Lark Saylor, and William Baugh. Baugh was cleaning onto his life when his wife found him. She knew he was at the tavern that night, but he did not return the following morning. She assumed he drank too much, so she went to pick him up just to discover this horrible sight. William was clinging onto his life and was able to give the very little details he had to the officials. No valuables or anything was taken from the bar. Just those 4 people were killed, and the killer got away with it. Again, this case is very obscure. The oldest found newspaper about the case was written 10 years after it happened, which is where most of the information around this has came from. The Bear King of Marble Falls. Girl carried off by monster. The headline of a newspaper released on May 11th, 1901, and attached was this photo. The story attached tells how a young girl named Rami Arlen was out gathering her flock of sheep. Her family noticed her extended absence, so they went to find her, only to see her getting carried away by a monster. Her mom fled back home to retrieve a gun, but when she returned, Rami was gone. The following day, a hunter was searching the woods when he discovered Rami and brought her back home. She was fine, just very confused. She told the story of how this bear-like man brought her to a cave and hit her every time she tried to leave. So, she waited for him to fall asleep before she left the cave. Now, the Bear King has become a legend in Marble Falls, Texas. The Alabama Stone. In 1817, 2 settlers in the territory of Alabama discovered something strange. A stone, with carvings inside of it. It would later be discovered that it was words in Latin, but no one in the town knew how to read them. The stone was taken into Tuscaloosa, where it was translated. It read, Hispon et Ind Rex, Latin for King of Spain and the Indies. Also below it are the numbers 1236. Today, scholars have argued over the inscription's meaning. The words are pretty much agreed to that it's a land claim for Spain, but the numbers are trickier. The common thought is that the stone is a marker of distance between that point and the Spanish territory. In this time, Spain used a measurement called leagues, and from Spain's claim to the stone was 1,216 leagues, 24 units off the marking on the stone. But it's reasoned that Spanish explorers at this time would be using sextants and other archaic tools, leading to that discrepancy. Cyclops of the Bayou. On a summer night in 1957, 4 teenagers just got finished watching a movie and were now driving through the swamps of Louisiana. They were approaching a bridge where they saw a car overturn into a ditch with what appeared to be a man walking out of it. They turned their headlights on and saw a monster. It was 7.5 feet tall and weighed an estimated 325 pounds. They couldn't see any clothes on it, but its most jarring feature was its face. Its nose was bent and it only had a single eye. The Cyclops began to chase the car, but the teens got away and drove to a police station. They reported what they saw, but the police did not take them seriously and did not do a follow-up investigation. Big Hoot. We have another cryptid from my state of West Virginia, but it's also been spotted in Ohio. This is Big Hoot, the nickname given to a massive 6-foot-tall owl that has been seen a few different times. There really isn't much more to go on about this thing, besides the fact that some people believe that the Mothman was one of these giant owls. The Phantom Whistler. Whistling in the woods. Recently, that's become a topic on social media, especially TikTok. Tons of videos of people saying, don't do it. The implication is that whistling in the woods attracts things you don't want to attract. But what happens when something from the woods whistles at you? That's the story we start Tier 10 with. In 1950, 18-year-old Jacqueline Cotto was stalked by a mysterious person for something in the woods. When she would be outside her home at night, something in the woods would whistle at her. This escalated into a break-in. Jacqueline didn't see who did it, and nothing was taken from the house, but she assumed it was the whistler. After Jacqueline announced an engagement to State Trooper Herbert Belsom, the whistler stepped it up. Calls came flooding into the house, threatening Jacqueline and her family. One night, the family did catch a glimpse of a big, stocky, tall man, but with no identifiable features. Due to this, Jacqueline went to stay at Herbert's house, but that night, the home received a call and the supposed whistler said, "Tell Jackie I know she's with Herbert." This was terrifying both of them, obviously so, but they continued on with their marriage and expected an attack at their ceremony. But none came. In fact, nothing ever came again. The Phantom Whistler ceased his harassment. No one ever knew who he was. Aurora UFO crash. We've got another early sighting of a UFO in the South. This one took place on April 17th, 1897, in Aurora, Texas. An article in the Dallas Morning News described an incident. It was said that a flying, strange machine struck a windmill and destroyed it. The pilot of the ship was then buried, and the remains of the ship were tossed into a watermill. It is also stated that a member of the Army Signal Service claimed the pilot was of Martian descent. The leading theory is that this story was a hoax, made to boost the popularity of Aurora. But I'm sure some of you are hearing that and thinking, sure, cover up. This happened, and it was covered up. Believe whatever you want. Rommel in Tennessee? As World War II drew to a close in Europe, thousands of German soldiers fled the collapsing nation. Many of them fled to South America. But an urban legend places one German official right in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox. The story first states that Rommel came to America in the early 1900s. He traveled the South, inspecting several battlefields of the American Civil War, studying the tactics and generals of the time, such as Robert E. Lee and Nathan Bedford Forrest. The second legend picks up with the collapsing German army. Even before it was ending, Rommel was looking to leave. He had planned to assassinate the German Chancellor, but was caught. Due to this, he took his own life in prison. But a legend states that instead, he fled Germany via a boat and entered the United States through the Gulf of Mexico. This legend is fueled by a lot of locals who have claimed to have seen Rommel across the area, or at least a guy who looked a lot like him. I guess it would be possible that Germany made up the story of his suicide to prevent, the embarrassment of letting one of their prisoners slip out. The Mad Gasser of Botetourt County. In the 1930s, citizens of Fincastle, Virginia were attacked by someone strange through an even stranger method. At 10 p.m. on December 22nd, 1933, Mrs. Kat Huffman was woken up by a foul odor permeating throughout her house. She called the police, and an officer arrived, but did not see anything out of the ordinary. After the officer left, another attack took place. This time, all members of the family were woken up and became ill, having to be taken to the hospital. As they drove one of their children to the hospital, they believed to see someone running from their house. This would be the first attack from the Mad Gasser of Botetourt County. The next day, a welder in Troutville, Virginia was attacked, and again on January 11th, 1934, another person reported a bad smell in their house, followed by someone strange being outside of it. This continued in a similar manner throughout February of 1934, before it ended just as fast as it started. No one was ever arrested or discovered to be the attacker. If you're familiar with this story, you're probably thinking about the Mad Gasser of Mattoon, when a series of similar attacks took place in Illinois during the mid-1940s. Could they be the same person? Both cases ultimately went unsolved. Armstrong Mountain Mystery Walls. Early settlers in what is now Fayette County, West Virginia, reported a strange sight. About 1,500 feet above the valley flood were massive rock walls that stretch across the landscape. The walls were said to be about 6 or maybe 7 feet in length, and they ran for miles on end. The walls weren't stacked or shaped like forts, they instead resembled long, messy tunnels. But the strangest part may be what wasn't found. Any traces of pottery or other artifacts that may indicate that this was a permanent settlement. Unfortunately, modern-day surface mining destroyed the ridge and its walls, eliminating all traces that they were ever even there. (1977) Florida UFO sighting. On February 10th, 1977, the police force of Madison County, Mississippi noticed something strange in the sky. It was described to be about 15 or maybe 18 feet off the ground and was metallic blue in color, with portholes on the center. It was also huge, 35 feet in diameter, and it emitted a humming noise. This gathered a crowd, and a ton of people saw this thing, where it just sat in a field before it eventually flew up into the sky and disappeared. This was the story for about a week, before the ones telling the stories suddenly said they made everything up, and that is where the story has ended. It's said that a lot of the people who saw something in Florida that night choose to no longer speak about it. Ancient Chinese in Georgia? This is actually the first entry I decided to write. As I was scrolling through the list of entries, this one caught my eye in particular, just from the sheer absurdity. The fact that a piece of ancient Chinese history ended up in the state of Georgia. So now let's discuss exactly what happened. In July of 2014, a man was on a hike along a stream in Georgia when he saw something sticking out of the soil. Once uncovered, he discovered what it was. An ancient, exquisite sword dating back to an undetermined Chinese dynasty. The sword had several symbols that were commonly seen with a handful, including the Zong, Shang, and Zia. The Zia dates back to 2070 to 1600 BC. So if we assume this sword is that old at most, how the hell did it end up in Georgia? Keep in mind, Christopher Columbus arrived in North America in 1492, nearly 3,200 years after this. So this sword being there makes people wonder, did the Chinese make it to the North American continent first? I do want to mention the Chinese sailor Zheng He, who is recorded to have traveled to places like Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and the Horn of Africa. After his death, some of his maps were burnt, and some believe these burnt maps may have charted North America. He died in 1435, 60 years before Columbus sailed, so maybe he did make it to Georgia, and he left this sword here accidentally. Others say this is a sword belonging to a group of Native Americans called the Olmecs, a group that had similar designs and motifs to the Shang dynasty, making some believe this sword belonged to them. Ogua River Monster. This is another sea cryptid, one hailing from my state. Most sea cryptids are usually serpentine-like, but Ogua stands out from this, as it is reported to be a massive snapping turtle. Some estimates place this thing at 500 pounds, others place it at 1,500. Same with its length, from 10 feet to 20 feet. Being a turtle, it also dwelt on land. The monster is sometimes depicted as having 2 heads as well. Sightings of Ogua date back to the earliest settlers of Appalachia. A legend claims that a young boy was walking down the Monongalia River before this monster lunged from the water and swallowed the child whole. More boring people believe that the Ogua is a rogue alligator that made its way up to West Virginia. Or it could have just been an overgrown snapping turtle. Those things are monsters anyways. But more fantastical theories claim this thing is a leftover dinosaur, now lurking in the waters of West Virginia. Regardless of what it is, you can fight it in Fallout 76. Wakula Volcano. When we think of volcanoes, what climate are they typically in? I'm immediately picturing Hawaii. Oceans, water, sand, beaches. That type of climate, right? But what if I told you one may be hiding under the swamps of Florida? In the 1860s, several newspapers around Tallahassee reported that a massive plume of steam was rising above the Floridian marshes south of the town. This was far more smoke than what a fire or a factory could have put off. So the first immediate thought was the most obvious one. There is a volcano under Florida. In these times, explorers attempted to get to the source to see what was going on, but the terrain was far too rough for them to travel to. One of the guides fell from a tree and hurt themselves badly, and another one grew sick from swamp fever and unfortunately lost their life. Due to this, it was called off. The steam, smoke, whatever, has not been seen since. Georgia stalks. In July of 1951, a pilot by the name of Fred Regan was flying over his Piper Club in Georgia when he felt something lift up on his biplane. It then crashed into a hovering object. The creature apologized to him for the incident and gave him a quick medical scan. It was said they cured him of a cancer he didn't even know he had, before he later woke up in a field without a scratch, and his plane was destroyed near him. The Wasp Paper Man. Here's a monster I hope to God isn't real because it's horrifying. The Wasp Paper Man. The first person who saw this thing was living in Virginia, which is terrifying to think that this thing might be bordering my state. The person went down into the woods to play with a friend. They went deep into a forest, following a path they had been on before, but now were greeted by a demon. It was said to be about 7 to 8 feet tall and was covered head to toe in wasp nest-like material, with a big opening in its face. The monster was sitting on a log and turned to face them, prompting them to flee back home, only to never see it again. Orion Williamson. In July of 1854, a farmer by the name of Orion Williamson was sitting on his front porch with his family in their Selma, Alabama home. His horses were out in a field grazing, and he was about to move them into the shade. He stood up and walked towards them, bending over to pick up a stick. He swayed it from left to right, absent-mindedly. He then saw his neighbors out on a walk and waved at them as they went by. Orion Williamson then vanished into thin air. His shocked family ran to the site he was standing at, only to see him completely gone. Obviously very shocked, they called the authorities, and the story spread throughout the region. A team of geologists arrived and dug up the area, attempting to find any cave-ins or crevices he may have fallen into. They found nothing. It was also said that they heard Orion's voice calling to him for weeks after the fact, and that the spot he disappeared in never had the grass grow back properly. The theories on what happened to Orion are terrifying, with one scientist proposing that a magnetic field disintegrated his atomic structure, sending him into another dimension. Kingfish Boat Ramp Murders. On August 1st, 1980, a family of 4 and another resident were involved in an incident at the Kingfish Boat Ramp, located in Holmes Beach, Florida. After a fishing trip, Juan Dumoy, his sons Eric and Mark, and Dumoy's brother-in-law, Raymond Barrows, were stopped by a white male in his early 30s. His ankle was hurt bad, and he asked for a ride to a hospital. Juan agreed to give him one, and he loaded his bicycle he was riding into the back of their car before they left. A minute or so into the ride, the man shot everyone in the car, killing them all, save for Raymond. He then fled on his bike and was spotted by Robert Matsky, who was suspicious of him. He followed in his car for a moment, and they stopped, to which the shooter also dispatched him. Then, he rode off on his bike and got away with his crime, leaving only theories. One was a pediatric doctor, and some believe that this shooter could have been related to a patient who passed away in his care. Some believe it was rather a hit or assassination from the Mafia, or the nation of Cuba. Des Moines was an anti-Castro activist, and some believe he was taken out for this. The Butterfly People. On May 22nd, 2011, one of the deadliest tornadoes hit the United States. The EF5 that tore through Joplin, Missouri. When everything was said and done, 167 people would lose their lives. During the Joplin tornado, several children reported an incredibly strange phenomena. Multiple children reported seeing butterfly people, small, winged creatures that were reported to shield children with their wings as debris fell around them. They were described to be beautiful, angelic, comforting. Some reports also said that these butterfly people were seen carrying bodies upwards into the sky. This wasn't one child reporting it, it was tons of children, all reporting the same thing. They would also draw these butterflies, and a lot of the drawings have that typical Christian angel appearance, but now with colorful wings. Keep in mind, Joplin is right in the middle of the Bible Belt, adding to the speculated theory that these things were some type of mass hallucination. Regardless if these things were real or not, the butterfly is a symbol of Joplin today. Not due to the alleged sightings. It's more meant to resemble Joplin's growth and recovery from the tornado as a whole. The Lady in Red. In the summer of 1969, farmers were digging at the Egypt plantation located in Crudger, Mississippi. Someone operating a backhoe felt a crunch, and they took a break to investigate what they had found. It was a very, very old coffin, made out of cast iron and glass, leaving the body inside visible. It was a young woman wearing a red velvet dress, white gloves, and black boots. The lady was incredibly well preserved, having been sealed with alcohol before she was buried. No one knows who this woman was, why she was buried in such a shallow spot, and no one knows when she died. But it's guessed she died sometime before the Civil War. She was reburied at a cemetery in Lexington, Mississippi, and has become a popular tourist attraction. 1897 airship sighting. Wizard of Otto. In the early 1930s, a man calling himself Omar Palmer walked into the Ozark Mountains of southern Mississippi, arriving at a village called Otto. He carried no papers and offered no credentials and refused to be photographed. But he did offer one thing: free medical care. Palmer then treated everything from infections to pneumonia and even polio. He also refused any type of payment. In 1933, Palmer would be arrested for practicing without a license, but when the case went to court, no one testified against him, leading to the case's collapse. After this, he moved his clinic to a nearby community called Hurley, before disappearing in 1938. During his entire time in the area, he never gave away any details of his past, simply saying he was called into the Ozarks and then he must have finished his mission and left. Coosa River Monster. Tier 12, the last one in the Iceberg, and we're starting off with another sea serpent. This one has been spotted in the Coosa River, which flows between parts of Alabama and Georgia. The monster is described to be a big black serpent with a horse's head. It was also said that the thing had scales and a white underbelly. Sightings first popped up of this thing in the early 1800s and came to a head again as a dam was being constructed on the Coosa River. The usual boring explanations are here: a giant catfish, a giant sturgeon, people lying, or people just lying. Take your best guess. Jasper County Ear Eater. In March of 1977, farmers across Jasper County, Mississippi noticed that their pigs were mutilated. They were still alive, but were missing something important: their ears. The farmers did see the impressions of teeth in their livestock's head, ruling out the possibility of a human doing this. So some freaky little monster was running around in the 70s biting off ears. At least 9 farms were affected, and the mutilation stopped 1 month into it. Lake Okeechobee Bones. Lake Okeechobee is in Florida and is one of the largest lakes in America. It is about 730 square miles in size and is very shallow. This means the lake recedes a lot, uncovering a lot of strange things hidden below its waters. In the early 1900s, the lake receded and inhabitants saw what lay below: skulls. This was the first documented case of human remains being found here, but it certainly would not be the last. Basically, since and to this day, bones are found in the lake whenever the water recedes. It's not known where the bones come from, but the leading theory is that Lake Okeechobee acts as a mass grave, where thousands of bodies have been laid to rest, only to be uncovered as the soil washes away, revealing the skeletal secrets to whoever stumbles across them next. Arellano Family Massacre. On April 16, 1968, the Arellano family, which included 6 people, were traveling from Mexico to San Angelo, Texas. Their car broke down with a flat tire, and sometime after that, 5 of them were killed. Their bodies were located near Highway US 277 in Edwards County, Texas. The sole survivor from the incident was Manuel Jr., who was only 5 years old. He was found face down in some weeds not far from his family. Whoever killed the Arellano family got away with it, as no leads have came forward. Donna Ogletree Johnson. Now we have our last missing person / unsolved murder for the day. That of Donna Ogletree Johnson. Her body was found battered on July 17, 1984 in Lamar County, Georgia. She was last seen taking trash to a dumpster. A few hours after this, her car and dogs were found parked nearby the dumpster, but she was not nearby. On that day, her body was found, albeit during a massive downpour, which washed away a lot of identifiable features, leaving her murder an unsolved mystery. Gaffney Aliens. And here we are, at the bottom of another iceberg, the first one of 2026. But don't worry, we're entering a recession this year. I will be making more icebergs. But before we make any more, let's finish this one off with another, the last alien visit. On the night of November 16th, 1966, 2 officers were driving through Gaffney, South Carolina when they saw a strange metallic object in a field. They then stopped to investigate it. A small door opened, and a humanoid stopped to step outside. The creature was short and asked a bunch of questions in perfect English. Then, it turned back around and left, claiming it would return in 2 days, which it did not. I think we're done here, man. And here we are at the end of another iceberg, the first one of 2026, but again, expect more. I've got a few other topics that will be covered soon. Until then, Happy New Year, wishing you all a wonderful, happy, safe, and prosperous 2026. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a wonderful day.